Hello everyone, this is Major Green, also known as Nitpicking Nerd, and I watched The Last Jedi a second time, and I did notice one big thing that I didn't notice the first time, and it's something that was also mentioned in one of the comments, and so I paid closer attention this time, so I don't know, maybe if it wasn't mentioned, if I didn't see that comment, maybe I again would have missed it, because it was very kind of brief. So there's a scene of which Ghost Yoda appears, and he burns that tree which contained the Jedi Bible, and he was kind of laughing at it and so on. So I thought, okay, Yoda is senile again, even though he's a ghost. And it was kind of funny, that scene, but it didn't make sense. So they basically kind of abolished the whole Jedi religion, I guess, which was kind of stupid. But on second viewing, I now see that actually Rey took that Bible with her when she left the planet. She basically gave up on Luke and left the planet on the Falcon. And they didn't show it, but we later see that she has those books on the ship. She actually opens a small shelf or something, and we quickly, it was like 1 second glimpse that we saw that she actually has those books. And I think we saw that again later, again, when Finn opened that same drawer. But it was so brief that I probably would have missed it again if I didn't read about it. So in that Yoda scene, Yoda was laughing at Luke because Luke was going nuts about the Bible burning, and Yoda was laughing, and Yoda said nothing in that library contained something that Rey does not already possess. And so on first viewing, we basically think that Yoda is basically saying all those books don't matter, all that matters, that Rey can do anything by herself, and that was kind of stupid. But now we understand that actually he was being literal, that because she took those books, she now has them, and so she'll be able to restart the Jedi religion even without Luke. So Yoda was just trolling Luke to have a laugh, basically, which is kind of funny. But why is he doing that? Why is he fooling Luke? For what reason? Is that what motivates him to do something in the end? I don't know, it's kind of strange, but it is something that adds rewatchability to the movie. That is something that is... I love stuff like that, that when you watch a movie another time, you notice something new each time. But I think that's the only new thing that I noticed in this whole movie. There were a lot of things that I'm sure a lot of people missed, but I don't think I missed any of them. I talked about all of them in my first review, like all those small foreshadowings, all those red herrings, all those little details. I think I did notice most of them. So anyway, this scene with Yoda makes more sense now. It also makes it funnier. It makes Yoda look much more funnier. And by the way, about Yoda himself, I do kind of like it that they made him like the original Yoda, because that's the way that Luke remembers him, so it makes sense for him to appear that way to him. However, visually he still kind of looks off, because he doesn't really look even like that original puppet. He looks kind of like a CGI version of that, so he looks kind of strange. I wish they would have done him a little bit similar to the other Yoda, the one from the prequels. Do something in between them, like it would be less jarring, because the last time we saw him was in the prequels, so suddenly he looks kind of like the original puppet, but still different from him, and that was kind of distracting. It kind of almost ruined the moment, but I did like his personality, because it was exactly the same like in The Empire Strikes Back, with the same kind of trollish sense of humor, which I think was part of what made the original Yoda so lovable, because he was funny, he had that strangeness to him, which he didn't have in the prequels, and so I like his personality in this. And so knowing the truth now that actually that tree did not contain anything, that makes it all funnier because of how he laughed at Luke. And so that's why I love this scene much more. One thing that doesn't make sense is if these Force ghosts can actually interact and do something, then why don't they appear and actually help the good guys in this fight? And also, where are the other Force ghosts? Where is the Obi-Wan ghost? Obviously they can't do that because of the actor. But the Anakin ghost, they can technically bring him back using a Hayden from the prequels. But I guess they don't want to do that simply because they are trying to avoid anything from the prequels, because they think all the fans hated the prequels, which by the way isn't true. So they're trying to deliberately avoid doing anything from the prequels, so they think everybody hates Hayden, so they don't want to show him. But it would actually make sense in the story if he does show up. And also it was justified that those changes that Lucas did to the old trilogy, because he replaced the ghost with the new actor, with Hayden, and so it would actually tie well with this one if he actually appears, because we saw him as that same young ghost. And I think it would tie well actually, and it would make sense. Like we know that part of the motivation of Kylo Ren was because he was talking to the helmet of Darth Vader, and he thought he's talking to his grandfather. And I guess it was really Snoke manipulating him to make him think that he's talking to Vader, when actually it was Snoke. Like that's my opinion. And it was never mentioned in this movie, but I kind of think that Kylo realizes that Snoke is manipulating him. I think it's obvious in this movie. It's part of the reason he kills him. And so it would actually be great in this movie if the spirit of Anakin actually appeared to Kylo Ren and tried to convince him to come back to the light side. And that would also add to the believability of him being in a conflict in this movie. Like in a large part of this movie, we are meant to believe that he might actually turn back to the good side, which is what Rey thinks. So if we saw a scene like that of Anakin appearing to Kylo and trying to convince him to come to the light side, and maybe even say to him that it wasn't him who was talking to him through that helmet, it was actually Snoke manipulating him, that would add so much sense to the movie. It would make us believe more that Kylo will actually change sides, which of course doesn't happen in the end, but it would definitely add to that conflict. And so I think that should have been done in this movie. It was a very big missed opportunity. Maybe we can imagine that happened in between scenes off screen. Maybe in some novel it can be said. It would actually add something. So I wish they would have done that, and it would make sense. How come those ghosts don't appear if they exist? Why don't they appear and do something? And at the very least talk to him. Another thing I noticed, I paid closer attention this time when Luke was fighting Kylo in the end. And I noticed that they didn't actually clash their lightsabers even once, which does make sense since it turns out Luke is a projection. It was kind of well done that you don't even notice it, like you see them fighting, but they don't actually fight. Like Luke is just avoiding him all the time, which makes sense later on, and it was done well so that you don't even notice it the first time. And so he wasn't fully there, and so it does make sense that he didn't want to clash swords, because then Kylo would realize that he's not really there. In the very end, when he tries to stab him, he just goes through him. So it was done very well, so you don't even notice it, that they're not actually clashing their lightsabers during that whole duel, and Luke was just avoiding the lightsaber all the time. And about that whole scene, I did like it the first time I saw it, because it was finally an epic moment. Like Luke finally is doing something, and he's like the supreme Jedi master, and he's the most powerful Jedi ever. That's how it would look like. They're all firing on him, and it does nothing to him. So that was an epic moment of Luke standing alone against that army. So that was awesome on the first viewing. However, on the second viewing, when you know that he's not really there, that it's just a trick, it's just a projection, it does kind of make it less epic. It makes him look not as powerful, and it's just not epic anymore. So that's a moment that is kind of ruined on a rewatch, because it's just a projection, he's just fooling them, and he's not really there, he's not really fighting them, he's not really, even though he still kind of died from it, so he still kind of sacrifices himself, but still it was all a trick basically. And it also makes Kylo look stupid. I mean, he knew about all those projections, like he did that with Rey, so he should have known that was possible. So how come he didn't realize that wasn't really Luke when they were all firing on him? Did he really think that he could withstand all of that? So that kind of makes Kylo look stupid, and that's one of the big problems in this movie, that all the villains are kind of stupid, like all of them. The General Hawks is turned into a complete comic relief character in this movie. Like everybody makes fun of him all the time and kick his ass all the time. And Snoke is great at first, and then he gets killed off because of his arrogance and because he doesn't pay attention, and so he is killed off easily. And then Kylo is getting tricked so easily that it makes him stupid also. So all the villains are basically stupid. So that's I don't like stupid villains. And another problem with Luke's sacrifice in the end is that it was all basically just such a small victory. Like all he did was save like a small bunch of people. Like in the very end, there were only like a few dozen of them. They were all on the Falcon in the end. All the rebels came down to just a few people in the end, and they were all kind of nobodies. Okay, there's Leia there, but no one really important. Like, what makes them so special that they will save the whole galaxy later? It doesn't make sense. In the original trilogy, when Obi-Wan sacrificed himself, it was basically to save Luke, because Luke later on defeats the Death Star, he saves the galaxy later, so that meant something. But here, Luke sacrifices himself like Obi-Wan did in the original trilogy. At this point in the movie, they're like only like two dozen people. They're like a small group of people in the very end. They all get killed off during the movie. There are less and less of them, and in the very end, it's like a tiny group of people. So Luke sacrificed himself just to save these couple dozen people. They're all on the Falcon in the end, so it's just a few people. And he didn't even save Rey. Rey was saving them also from the other side. So it's not like he saved her, so he didn't actually save anyone really important. And I know they say in the movie that these people, they are the spark that will burn the First Order, but it doesn't really make sense, because wouldn't there be other rebels in the galaxy anyway? Like, what makes these guys so special? Is that because they're the original rebels from the first trilogy? I mean, some of the rebels were exactly the same guys from the original trilogy, like Admiral Akbar and that alien guy who was sitting next to Lando in Return of the Jedi. So you see the exact same faces and they pilot the exact same ships. So it's basically the exact same group of people from the original trilogy. But really, what makes them so special? Wouldn't there be other rebels in the galaxy anyway? So Luke's victory was not really that big of a deal. I think it would have made more sense for him to actually do something physical himself instead of just projecting himself. Maybe it would have been better if he actually came physically to help them maybe fight and kill Kylo Ren, because he's now the leader of the First Order. So maybe he and Rey should go after him together. That would make more sense instead of just sacrificing his life to save a small group of rebels who are kind of meaningless anyway. So anyway, the main plot of this movie overall is stupid. Like, there's a lot of good action, a lot of nice effects, even character moments. There's a lot of good stuff in the movie, but the overall plot is stupid. It's more stupid than any other Star Wars movie in my opinion. Like, the overall plot, when you think about it, nothing makes any real sense. So anyway, that's my impression from the second viewing. Let me know what you think. I'll probably make some more videos discussing specific topics. I don't want to make these videos too long. So I'll probably be talking about more specific topics, and the challenging part is how to write the titles without spoiling the scenes in the movie for those who haven't seen it. So I will have to be creative with the titles. I will try to make it in such a way that those who've seen it will understand what the video is about, but those who didn't will not. So it will be kind of challenging. So anyway, that's it for now. Let me know what you think in the comments below, and I will see you next time. Bye bye.